Welcome back to Verge News, your go-to source for the latest developments in immigration policy and global mobility. Today, we're diving into a case that's not only high-profile, but also uniquely contentious: Prince Harry's 2020 U.S. visa application and the recent release of heavily redacted documents by the Department of Homeland Security. Joining me to discuss these developments is my co-host, Michael. Michael, this case seems to touch on so many layers: fame, privacy, and the fairness of the immigration process.
It really does, Ella. The release of these documents, which span more than 80 pages, came after persistent efforts by the Heritage Foundation. They've been pushing to find out whether Prince Harry disclosed his past drug use when applying for his visa, something he openly admitted to in his 2023 memoir, Spare. But even with the release, most of the content is heavily redacted, leaving many questions unanswered.
Exactly. And that's where the debate lies, right? On one hand, DHS has stated there's no evidence Prince Harry received special treatment or that any irregularities occurred during his application. They've emphasized that his privacy outweighs the public's curiosity. On the other hand, the Heritage Foundation argues that transparency is critical to maintaining public trust in the immigration process. They believe high-profile individuals like Prince Harry should be held to the same standard as everyone else.
That's the central conflict here. Under U.S. immigration law, applicants are required to honestly disclose past drug use, and it's something that could potentially impact their admissibility. What makes this case so intriguing is that Prince Harry's admissions, like experimenting with cocaine and psychedelic mushrooms, were made public in his memoir. Naturally, this has led to speculation about whether those details were included in his application.
And beyond just speculation, Michael, it raises broader questions about how discretion is applied in immigration cases. U.S. officials often have significant leeway when it comes to evaluating applicants, which can leave room for criticism, especially when the applicant is a public figure. The Heritage Foundation's concerns seem to stem from that perception, that some individuals might receive favorable treatment due to their prominence or social status.
It's an understandable concern. Critics argue that this level of discretion could lead to unequal application of the law, while supporters of the current system claim that high-profile cases like Prince Harry's actually receive more scrutiny because of the public interest involved. It's a fine balance between transparency and respecting personal privacy, which Judge Carl Nichols highlighted in his 2024 ruling that upheld the confidentiality of Prince Harry's records.
That ruling has been pivotal. Judge Nichols essentially ruled that curiosity, no matter how widespread, doesn't override privacy laws unless there's evidence of wrongdoing or misconduct. Still, the release of these redacted documents hasn't satisfied the Heritage Foundation, which maintains that less redaction could offer much-needed clarity about whether the process was applied fairly.
Ella, what's interesting is that this isn't just about Prince Harry. It's part of a much larger conversation about transparency in immigration law and the balance between public accountability and individual rights. If public figures can expect this level of protection, what might that mean for the average applicant whose personal information is rarely scrutinized on a global stage?
It's a valid point. Public figures like Prince Harry bring unique challenges to the immigration system because their cases attract so much attention. On one hand, there's the argument that transparency can reinforce trust. But on the other hand, it could lead to unnecessary invasions of privacy, especially if no violations occurred. And, as DHS mentioned, there's no evidence of any special treatment in this case.
Right, but that hasn't eased concerns entirely. The Heritage Foundation continues to push for more openness, arguing that reforms may be needed to ensure fair application of the law. Meanwhile, Prince Harry has remained silent throughout this entire process, letting the legal and public discourse play out without his direct input.
That silence itself is interesting. By not addressing the controversy, Prince Harry may be signaling a desire to focus attention on the larger issue of privacy rather than feeding public speculation. Still, it hasn't stopped people from debating whether his situation reflects broader flaws in the system, flaws that could affect anyone applying for a U.S. visa.
And that's what makes this case so significant. It's about more than just one person. It's about the perception of fairness in the immigration process as a whole. Whether it's about drug use disclosures, celebrity influence, or systemic transparency, the questions raised here are likely to shape future debates in immigration policy.
Absolutely. For now, much of the information remains obscured and the mystery unresolved, but the discussion about privacy versus public interest continues. With organizations like the Heritage Foundation calling for stricter scrutiny and public trust at stake, this story remains one to watch.
And we'll be following it closely. Thanks for joining us today for this deep dive into Prince Harry's U.S. visa case. It's a complex and evolving issue with significant implications for immigration policy and public accountability.
As always, thank you for listening. For more immigration updates, visit us at visaverge.com. See you next time.